Hey everybody, it's Amanda Davis, owner and founder of Business Solutions by Design. We are your accounting ally, coming back to you this week to talk about all things fraud, because it's July and that's what we've been covering. We started off with what types of fraud there are out there that you can look out for. And then we discussed last week about how people and employees could play a role in the fraud. So this week we're going to talk a little bit about things you can do to prevent the fraud or hopefully detect it if it happens. So when we're talking about technology, there's a lot of things that could happen with fraud. And so there's a lot of scams out there. There's one about the tax fraud where they give you a huge refund and they pretend to be the IRS and say, give us your money back. That's a fraud. There's ones where they're Microsoft and they want access to your computer. Oh, but by the way, once you do that, they're gonna not release control and you're gonna be screwed and they're gonna want money from you. That's a fraud. There was one I received about a federal grant, and of course that was obviously a fraud. So there's all these different ways. Criminals are highly creative people, and so if it sounds too good to be true, then take a pause, take a breath. If your bank sends you an email and says they're gonna put a hold on your account if you don't give them all of this personal information and detailed account information, you may just want to pick up the phone and call them, which is what I did when another accounting firm sent me a document via DocuSign. I believe it was last month. And turns out that email was fraudulent and they were going to put something on my computer, I imagine, or do something malice. So hopefully you guys can get your technology, work with professionals. That's a really good lead-in point with this one, because if you work with a good IT professional, they can help you protect to the best of your ability with different types of things in terms of internet security, firewalls, and just simply protecting your computers and your equipment, your cell phones. There's a lot of stuff on there from all the different frauds out there. So work with professionals. Another small little thing to keep in mind when it comes to your cell phone, turn off just the Wi-Fi where it just automatically connects to any local Wi-Fi. Make it ask you if you want to connect, because the last thing you want to do is walk into Starbucks, have your phone automatically connect to the Wi-Fi, and have whatever joker sitting in his car or just hanging out at the coffee shop stealing all your information, your emails, everything that's on your phone. There's a lot of data on your phone. So don't just automatically connect to unsecured networks unless you have a phone that has, or a computer that has nothing on it. That's one of the things. We do a lot of online and digital and virtual work, but I can't sit at a coffee shop and connect to their Wi-Fi and do it. I can't allow my information, because it's an extension of my client's information, to be available and at risk in that case. So be very careful with internet connections and make strong passwords to the best of your ability. So those are some things you can do on the IT front. But in terms of the business and the organization, it all comes down to working with the right professionals, people who know what to look for, people who can help you. Now, just because you hire a CPA doesn't mean that if fraud happens, they're going to know about it. There are things that can happen that can truly hide fraud, things like collusion if one person's covering up for another. But the more you can do about it, the stronger your controls are going to be. The biggest one is called internal controls. And what that means is don't have the same person doing all the same things. And that's great, but what if you're a one-man shop? So there's some things that you can do, or a small business. Maybe you only have a handful of people and it's really hard. So be very careful with who does what and how that goes out. So if somebody's writing the checks, say you have to pay people, then another person needs to sign the checks. That's important. A lot of companies and organizations get this, but the breakdown is then they give the check that they signed back to the person who wrote it and say, hey, stuff this in the envelope and send it out. Big no-no, guys. The person signing the check needs to drop it in the mail, because the person writing the check can then alter the check and do something with it. And in that case, if somebody's covering up for them, if the person writing the check can also alter the data in your accounting software and it never gets identified, that's another option. Your vendor could write themselves a big old check, change the name in your accounting system, the check gets printed with a signature, and everything gets reconciled with that one person, and all of that got covered up, and maybe it's one of your vendors that you pay that typical amount to, that could be something that could very well happen. So keep your eyes out, keep looking at the data, hire professionals that can help you, and make sure you try to do some separation of duties. If you think you don't have that option, go ahead and look into some technology. In terms of bill pay, we work with bill pay programs called Bill.com. We work with HubDoc so that our clients don't have to share their login credentials for their financial institutions. Bill.com allows for one person to create the bill, another person to approve it, and then potentially another person to actually issue the payment, and no physical check crosses anybody's hands. And there's an audit trail of who did what. So there's things with QuickBooks Online, you can add users to your accounting, and you can give them specific permissions so that they can't go in and do things that you don't want them to be able to do. So be very careful about what's going on in your organization, and make sure, in addition to that, physical assets are also being guarded against. So I went out to this customer one time, and they went to pay me my check, and they just pulled a little check out of the drawer and wrote my check and signed it and said, "Here you go." And I just looked at them. Not only does that, break down the internal controls, so the person signing it shouldn't be the person writing it, should not be the person reconciling it or recording it, but going all past all that, those checks were just sitting in an open drawer that's not locked, that anybody could break into the office and steal those checks and do whatever they wanted to. So be very careful. Lock up your physical assets. Make sure they're hard to get access to. Do that with your technology. And also hire professionals. Hire good IT people. Hire good CPAs. If you do need an attorney, go ahead and make sure that you have a great team of professionals that can help you identify stuff. And be smart. Don't click on those little links just because they taunt you that your accounts are going to get closed down and something's going to happen and it's urgent. Pick up the phone and call the originator to make sure it is a valid request. So I hope all of these little notes are good for you. Go ahead and let us know what things you're doing to protect yourself against fraud, or any stories that you have. We'd love to hear from you. This is Amanda Davis with Business Solutions by Design, your accounting ally, signing out, and we'll be back next week.